Hi everyone, it's Tom with the LEC recap of the third week of the LEC Summer Split. As I said in my preview video, this is the week where I expected teams to really live up to their potential, because the first week, it's opening week, you get back from break. Second week, new patch, okay, sure, maybe you have to adjust to this. But now, teams really, in my opinion, had to get into full shape. So let's look at the matches that were played and share highlights as usual. And at the end, I'll share my thoughts on the team's performances overall so far in this split. We kicked off day one with XL versus Misfits. And this whole day one review will be a bit shorter than usual, actually, because you'll notice that there were quite some stomps. XL versus Misfits. They had a strong start, just in general, Misfits with 2 kills on Kreis, who decided to not take Flash. He tweeted earlier this split actually that he would no longer refrain from taking Flash, but here he was yet again, and he paid a hefty price for it. It was a calm and composed game from Misfits overall, who calmly kept applying pressure on XL overall, but it felt like similar to when XL played against Rogue in the first week. They didn't really know what to do. We could see them just grouping up in the mid lane, yeah, they were just very indecisive, and Misfits played around the map very well. Were very hungry, but again were calm and composed, and Misfits just took that win. Then we went to Mad Lions versus SK Gaming. They're a very aggressive deep dive composition from Mad Lions. They had Nocturne, Lee Sin, Kai'Sa and Galio, so they're basically all on one target. Even though it looked like SK Gaming would get a good start in the opening phase of the game, where Elyoya roamed into their SK's topside jungle, was on a sliver of health, but SK Gaming somehow, with 3 people chasing him, did not manage to get him down. And that was incredible. That was just such a big mistake, which I think if they got that kill would have allowed them to be competitive in the game, but unfortunately for them, Mad Lions used that opportunity of Elyoya getting away with a sliver of health to apply the pressure themselves. They're like, okay, well, then we'll bring the fight to you. They got quickly ahead with kills. They used their lead to secure the outer turrets, and even though Mad Lions got a bit too aggressive a few times, like in the bot lane, where they were diving into SK's bot lane a bit too deep, and SK got a few kills back in the end. Mad Lions was simply too far ahead for SK to do anything about it. And to give an impression of what Mad Lions' competition were to do, here's a little clip.
Combo, will SK look for this? Well, Lilith is walking around. The rest of SK not quite here yet. True Shot Barrage only hits onto Kai'Sa, and there comes Armor's TP. Immediately, SK should back away, but Humanoid has found the engage onto Lilith, and Mad Lions are on the chase. Armor going in with the flash. Lilith pops the stopper to try and keep himself alive. Janak trying to put the damage down as well with the Sky Splitter flash kick onto Jetsu, but he flashes over the wall, and Kazi will chase him down. That's the killer instinct if I've ever seen one. Kai'Sa, though, continuing to push in here. Blue and Janak still very healthy. Lilith goes down for the...
Then we went to Schalke 04 versus Rogue, and this was another stomp in Rogue's favor. Schalke 04 had an interesting composition with the Gwen and Diana and a Set in the mid lane, so they're trying something different. On Rogue's side, it was Inspired who played the Kindred. He said later on Twitter that he only plays Kindred because AD carry items are broken and Kindred plays as an AD carry, while the champion itself is not very good. So that's an interesting take on that, obviously. Rogue's bot lane was just incredibly dominant. 3 deaths on Neon at 10 minutes were kind of the final nail in the coffin already for Schalke 04, who couldn't do much in the entire game. Schalke managed to get only 3 kills, and it was a simple Rogue stomp. As I said, these recaps are gonna be a bit shorter because the games itself weren't very interesting. Astralis vs Fnatic was that was a bit more interesting. At least it gave the impression to be a bit more even for a longer time, where Fnatic and Astralis both were trying to look for fights. And even though you could see that Fnatic was probably having the upper hand for the most part, Astralis stayed competitive, and that's something we've seen them do against G2 as well, which is pretty interesting, that against these tougher opponents, they also seem to be able maybe to lift themselves up a bit, or maybe they drag their opponents down. It's really hard to say, obviously, what's happening there, but that is something that's interesting to see. In the end, though, I think that Fnatic in their current shape is looking very good, and that is something that they managed to do against Australia as well, because when the late game happened, you could see that Fnatic really put their foot down. They were playing well overall, and I think this game in particular, I say it's interesting and was very entertaining. We saw White Knight in top shape in the top lane, but Hylissang was the standout player who once again had a moment where it was this weird coin flip where he died, but another moment where it's just brilliant, mind-blowingly good play. He was in peak shape, so if you want to see some Hylissang highlights, I do definitely recommend watching this one, even though the other game he played this week was also a very good game by him. But in the end, as I said, Fnatic, when the late game arrived, put their foot down and got their win. G2 versus Vitality was the final match of the Friday, and G2 had a bit of a weird draft. At least to me, it seemed a bit weird, where they had the top side of Olaf and Karma, where you can say, okay, that's fine, you know, Karma buffs the Olaf runs forward and kills things. But Gwen in the mid lane, which is something we don't see a lot of. I know Caps plays it a lot in the mid lane, is something that was highlighted on the broadcast as well. But then they had Jinx, so you have a few champions who kind of wanna push forward, you know, and walk over the enemy, or rather, when the enemy dies in, they capture it. That's also something they're very good at. But then you have a Jinx as an AD carry who is more about, okay, let's stay back, let's peel away at them, and it was very weird. And you could see it in the game as well, that whenever G2 tried to do something, Vitality, who had a much well-rounded comp, who had like Lee Sin in the early game, who was very good, obviously, for jungle self-made, and then Niski on the rise. Sorry, not Niski, obviously. Leader on the rise, and Aphelios for Crown Shot, who are both champions that are very good in the late game. So they had a much more well-rounded composition. They could stand back and dish out the damage as G2 tried to walk into Vitality a bit, and then when the fight would actually commence, G2 would already be at, I don't know, 70% health, and that's obviously a big deal. So that is kind of the tone of the game. Vitality also did start very well. They got 3 kills very aggressively. And G2 did get 1 kill off the back of that, but that was the only kill that they would get in this game. Yes, even this game was a stomp, even though it should probably have been the closest game of the day if you look at the standings and the overall perceived power level of these teams. But I think a great example of showing not just G2's flaws in their composition, but also what Vitality managed to do so well is a fight at the Dragon Pit.
There's a Karma, there's a lot of tools that G2 can use as well. And G2 are currently grouped up. That's a death sentence onto Cap. Selfmade's going to be forced to take the Lantern to safety. The box has already been used, and Leader is going to get caught out, stepping away. Gets tagged by the Undertow, dash over the wall from Caps. W goes down, now G2 split up. It's a 4v4 and a 1v1. Caps rejoins the fray, death sentence connects. That's a Devour on cooldown. What can Vitality do? Selfmade still got the flash available, still got the Sonic Wave, and it is a tense dance. Nobody yet caught out enough to go down.
Very tense indeed. Heal was used by Reckless, but the poke continues to come out. The Drake is being started, hook whips.
Their sentence won't find the target just yet. Linky will be able to devour up one. Super Mega Death Rocket puts so much damage onto Vitality, they're forced to retreat. Selfmade goes in, gets the kick, does not find the kill. He does! It's actually Leader that takes down Caps. There's a follow-up there as well, as now Jankos has dropped down. Vitality inside the pit as Wonder's running for his life. The Realm Warp will send 2 members of Vitality, and they repress.
So G2 suffered a surprisingly harsh loss against Vitality and took another L in this formative area, I guess, of this roster. We'll get to that a bit later as well when I share my thoughts on the teams. Day 2 kicked off with SK versus Excel. A bit of a bottom dweller match and not something that many people, I guess, would get very excited for. The excitement is maybe in finding, okay, is SK actually going to get their first win this time around? Because at this point they were on a 6-game losing streak. As for Excel, I guess in the mid lane, Nukedog had some pretty interesting performances, pretty good performance overall. So that is something people could look out for. But this game, actually, it was SK who was slightly more ahead in the early game, because XL got was a bit too indecisive. Once again, we saw this from them. I think especially you could see that SK, they let Jesu, who was playing the Tristana, farm all their gold, while Patrick tried to roam mid a few times to get something done, but then didn't get anything, not even an assist or anything, so he was only losing out on everything that Jesu was gaining. We could see XL hovering in the mid lane when SK was pushing in top, and then only when it was too late, XL would be like, oh, we probably should go top with a few people, right? And it was just mind-blowing to me that XL was so reactive to the most obvious things and responded so late as well to everything that SK was doing. But props to SK, obviously, for abusing this to the max. It was still a very ugly game. I will say not any of these teams were playing at a level that's like, okay, well, yeah, you can be happy with that. For example, SK Gaming let XL's Rift Herald, which they once got pushed down two mid lane turrets, which wasn't a big deal in the end, but it is an unnecessary window you are giving to XL to maybe find a way back into the game. So that was definitely an ugly game. I still think that overall SK should obviously be happy. And this was a great game for their new support player, Lilip, who many people thought, okay, you know, he's a rookie being thrown into the deep. How is he actually going to perform? And on the first day, he did not perform very well. But today, he set up many of the great engages that SK found. So props to him, especially for this game. Misfits vs Shogun of Fear followed as the second game of Saturday. And Schalke this time thought, okay, you know, Misfits lost to Rogue, who then were playing the Nocturne Fiddlesticks combination. We're going to do the same. With Broken Blade on Riven and the Nocturne in mid lane instead. But it was Misfits who came out ahead. Strong early game from Misfits once again. They got 2 kills for Hirwitz. And truth be told, he should have died maybe a few more times. He got away with a sliver of health. But in the end, he worked well with what he got. Rezro got 3 kills. At 15 minutes into the game, Misfits was like 2.5k ahead. They had 2 Drakes. And every time Schalke tried to find an engage of Misfits just turned it around with better target selection. It was a fight in the top lane where Schalke thought, okay, we're actually going to start this fight. And then Misfits said, okay, you can do that, but we'll just kill you one by one. And then you won't have any team members left standing, which is what they did very well. Misfits themselves also set up fights very well. So I guess, you know, it quickly turned into a stomp. And I'll give an example of the fight that Schalke decided to choose, but then Misfits turned around.
Misfits make a play. Teleport is going to be channeled here. Limit's about to lose the wall. The equalizer will slow down Neon. The first target will get pulled back by the Fate's Call. Vanda's trying to displace, dissuade, distract Schalke, buy time for the Bunny Rabbits to arrive. Kire starts channeling the full Crow Storm, and we lose objectives. No, the fight, we come back. It's so far a 1-for-1. Limit is still alive, but for how long? That's Neon being jumped on, and he will get popped in the top lane. Limit's right.
Astralis versus Rogue had a quiet early game. Astralis got 2 opening kills, but Rogue got 2 back quickly, and after that it toned down a bit. I do think that in this game Astralis was exerting pressure very well, which is normally something that we see Rogue do, where Rogue tries to play around the map and the opponents are walking behind. But I do think in this case it was Astralis actually who was playing around the map pretty well, trying to keep up with Rogue, and sometimes it was Rogue who needed to catch up with Astralis, making moves a bit more. So that was very positive from Astralis' side, but in Rogue fashion, they were obviously trying to move their players around to get them the gold advantages. Hansama most notably on the AD carry, getting ahead, getting 2 items, and then being straight up busted. So that is what Rogue was trying to do, and they did it pretty well. I do think that this game was very boring. It was a typical Rogue game in that sense, where for 30 minutes, both teams were kind of posturing. You could see them maybe, you know, in a standoff in the river, it was like, okay, are you gonna make a move? No. Are you gonna make a move? No. Then they would just walk away while one of the teams would do the objective. So that was pretty boring. And overall, it was a pretty boring game. Absolutely should not watch it. But a highlight of the game was when Rogue went for an Infernal Drake, while Astralis thought, okay, we'll use this opportunity to take the Baron then.
Wait for the Baron. Is it a 50-50 though? Can they get anyone in the area and into the pit? Now Inspired is on the way, but it's 6k, it's getting lower, they're burning through it. It's going to be hard for Astralis to fight in this pit though if they get caught up. The Akali might have room to work. Can they steal it? No! Zanzar has taken it away. If they win the fight, this is going to be massive, but White Knight caught in the midst of everybody. They're getting absolutely shredded. Promise Q, the ulti is cancelled. White Knight gets nothing in the midst of it.
And with that, the gates were open, Rogue accelerated and picked one more fight on Astralis and closed out the game off the back of that. So, as I said, typical Rogue game, not much happens for 30 minutes and then Rogue just wins in the, in the final stages. Vitality versus Mad was one of the most exciting matches of the weekend in my opinion. We saw Selfmade on an Evelyn, which is obviously a pocket pick for him, which was very exciting. And it was a very explosive early game. Leader dove in the top lane, trying to kill Armut, but he went way too hard and way too far and ended up dying instead. Then Mad was diving Vitality, and they got a kill while Vitality managed to double kill Mad Lions' bot lane on the other side. Vitality did pull back into the game off the back of Leader actually, who chased down to get a shutdown and get back in the gold running with Mad Lions. So that was very good from him. And from there on, I do think that the game maybe slowed down a little bit. It was still very entertaining because both teams were trying to make plays all around the map. Mad Lions a bit more controlled, Vitality a bit more aggressive, but that is maybe something that we've come to expect right now, whereas last year Mad Lions was the most aggressive team. This time it's Vitality who's just keeping out, throwing punches, and even if they miss, you know, they'll try to make the best of it, while Mad Lions knows, I think, a bit more how to dial in their aggression. It was a very close game, many skirmishes all around. On Vitality's side, it was SLT, who, even though he didn't get many kills, he did so much damage on the set, and Leader on the Viego, who were doing many things, and Humanoid and Armut on Mad Lion's side were doing a lot of kills, so a lot of damage, and they were just facilitating a lot for their team. To give an example of how explosive the game was, at 26 minutes it was 11 kills, which is not something we see a whole lot of. And Vitality had like 3 Drakes compared to Mad Lions' 1 Drake. But we could see that Vitality, with that shape they were in, was getting ahead steadily. Mad Lions had more trouble trying to find out how to deal with what Vitality was trying to do in the game, which is running around, finding kills, but actually coordinating it pretty well. And Vitality actually managed to win this game. If you saw my preview video, you know I predicted this to happen. Not quite in this fashion. I thought Vitality would be more ahead in the early game than they ended up being. But in the end, it was a very entertaining game, which was pretty close. I think it could have gone either way for quite a long time. Fantastic performance from Humanoid, once again, who tried to keep Mad Lions into the game. But yeah, Vitality, a 2-0 week for them. So that's definitely props for that performance. And then the final game of the week, it's the game everybody always watches, is G2 versus Fnatic. Both teams had incredibly skirmish-heavy compositions. For example, we saw Caps on the Nocturne, who was constantly trying to roam and trying to dive. It was very entertaining. We saw Adam on the Renekton, who was playing very well, it should say. And honestly, from the early minutes, you could see that this game was going to be a bloodbath, which it ended up being. Definitely was very entertaining. You had Mickey, who was on the Pantheon, trying to roam, trying to engage with his ultimate. He did it very well a few times. But I should say that I would definitely recommend watching this game. It's one of the most entertaining games I've seen so far. Not just this split, but in this year it was very entertaining, given also the extra stakes, obviously, with the rivalry these teams have. Overall, I do think that you could pretty early on see that Fnatic had much better idea of what they wanted to do, and G2 was trying to make the best of the tools they were working with. Now, I do think that G2 definitely had chances to win this game. They in the early game especially, I think they were a little bit ahead. and Fnatic was trying to catch up and meet the speed at which G2 was trying to run the game. So overall, it was pretty close up until, I think, I don't know, still in the mid game, I would say that both teams still pretty had a good chance, even though Fnatic was enlarging their lead, and especially when Adam came online on the Renekton, who just went berserk on the champion. Absolutely insane performance from him. Also worth watching for that. But if I have to share a highlight, you know, I keep saying that as if somebody is putting a gun to my head and making me do this, while it's obviously me trying to share the highlights and deciding that that's something I want to do. But anyway, if I have to share a highlight, it would absolutely be a crucial ultimate from Hylissang on Taric in the Baron Pit.
Yeah, Niski and Whipple already starting this one up. Upset with the pseudo smite secure coming in from the Rend if he wants it. Jankos in the area has to be careful on these face checks. Adam waiting in the darkness. An equalizer, a flash, not available for Jankos. He needs to steal with the equalizer or he needs to find a way into a pit. 6K getting lower. Tension continues to mount. Upset stepping forward. Hylissang now in the midst of the entire team. Whipple flashing over the wall. There's absolutely zero hesitation. Jankos completely cleaned up. But it's the curtain call from downtown. A brief moment of pause as the shots start to land. Adam there to body block. Caps, Wonder in the area, ready to go in again. They need to win this fight or they will lose the Baron. Fnatic not afraid to keep this one going. Wonder waiting in the darkness. Reckless trying to stay his arm's distance away, trying to keep safe. Adam stepping forward, ready to double dash through into the back line if he needs to. 7K getting lower. Mickey here as well. Fnatic are not scared of G2, but they might be scared of the Pantheon. That's going to be the ulti coming in. Targ ulti coming in as well. And they're in the midst of an invulnerable Fnatic. Fnatic have turned the fight back. G2 are getting nothing. Niski is going forward. He's got a stolen curtain call, but it won't do much use for him now. Wonder has to run to safety. Ulti out over the wall.
And gradually, you could see that Fnatic was pulling ahead more and more and just running down G2, who had very much trouble with dealing with the aggression of Fnatic, which is not something I expected to see. I had hoped that G2 would level up their gameplay for this week, but it is what it is. And Fnatic absolutely deservedly and dominantly won the game against G2. And that brings us to the standings of the LEC Summer Split at the moment. Misfits are still in first place with a 6-1 record at the moment. Then follow Fnatic and Rogue, both who have 5 wins and 2 losses. In fourth place are 3 teams that share a 4-3 score. It's G2, Mad Lions and Vitality. Then in 7th place we have Astralis, Schalke 04, XL and SK Gaming closes out the list in 10th position, now with a win, but still with 6 losses in their record. So now for some thoughts on each team in general. I'll start for the bottom and go up from there. SK Gaming getting their first win is obviously, as I said before, it's pretty good for them. Even though the game itself was pretty ugly and they need so much more to turn the ship around, that is still, in my opinion, not looking very good. But the important thing for them is getting that win is such a big deal for your mentality. Like, okay, so it is possible with this lineup to win. It doesn't have to be pretty, but we are capable of winning games. And having that switch in your head is very important, that you acknowledge, okay, we have something to work with. It is not hopeless. And, you know, it's still going to be very tough for them to make it to the playoffs. But for them, they have something to work with now. Not just a lot of feedback for what goes wrong in their games, of their losses, but also what goes right in our games. What are we doing well? And what causes us to be in a state where we manage to close out games. So I think that is very positive for them. I'm very happy personally to see that someone like Lilip, who was, you know, at the start of the split, SK Gaming already had the chance of promoting him to their starting lineup, but they'd rather put in their coach, which was then a big disaster. And now obviously for Lilip to be thrown into this sinking ship that was the lineup, but then actually managing to perform very well, big props to him. Treats, as usual, was an incredible player on SK. The guy has been playing well for most of the split in the jungle role, and he is still the pillar upon which this lineup needs to build. Overall, I do think that Blue as well in the mid lane, especially in the game he played against Excel, had a very good game. So there are upsides for SK now. It's just that I'm not sure if that is something they're going to be able to consistently hold on to and consistently replicate against better opponents who actually try to do something on the map, which is something that Excel was absolutely not doing. Excel itself, yeah, I mean, they're just maybe a bit better than SK Gaming, even though, yeah, it's a best of one that they lost directly against SK Gaming. I still think that if you look at the performance so far overall in the split, you can see few more upsides to Excel than to SK Gaming. Maybe they rely Excel a bit too much on Nuke Duck popping off at the moment, which is something that he's not going to be able to consistently do because no player can give everything they have and play at their absolute top level for all 18 games that they play in the split. But overall, Excel has a lot to work on. I really wonder what is happening with Patrick because he's not playing well overall. The team seems very indecisive at very basic moments to me where they try to make stuff happen, but they don't communicate well. So that's something they absolutely need to work out, in my opinion. Schalke 04 then, sad to see, obviously, that the team that was 4th in the spring split now is hovering at the bottom with a 2-5 score and needs another maybe Schalke 04 miracle run to make it to the playoffs. I'm not sure what's going wrong in the team. Broken Blade is a consistent player in the top lane. He is actually behind Hirit, probably the best performing top laner if you look at performance within the team overall. But the rest is just failing a bit. Nuclear Int has shown that he can do a lot, but he's very inconsistent. Kirai hasn't shown that he can do a lot yet. Neon is struggling in the bot lane. We saw again a 0-3 game from him. As I mentioned before, 0-3 at 10 minutes. I think him and Limit are definitely struggling as well. So a lot of things to figure out for that roster in order to thrive again. I do think that they have the player power to do so, but they really need to find a way to unlock that and to channel that consistently as well. Astralis as the final team that is also 7th at 2-5. I think that the score is not entirely reflective yet of how good Astralis is. They've played G2 so far. They've played Fnatic. So, you know, those are rosters. I think they also played Rogue. So, you know, they've had strong opponents to play against. Obviously, you're going to need to take a few games of a few teams you expect to be better if you actually want to prove that you're better. So, and make it to the playoffs. So that's something that Astralis needs to do. But I do think that overall, you know, you can see in Astralis that in the early stages and sometimes in the mid game is keeping up pretty okay with stronger opponents, so that should give them a bit of hope. And yeah, I guess they have a shot at making it to the playoffs, but it's going to be very difficult for them. I think at the moment the divide between the top 6 and the bottom 4 is pretty visible in the LEC. We get to the top 6 then. We'll just start with Vitality, who go on a 2-0 streak. Well, I guess they have a 2-0 weekend. It's not really a streak yet, right? Let's see if they continue their winning formula in the next week. But pretty good performance from them, obviously. I still think that they are a bit too rough around the edges sometimes. Bit too uncoordinated. As I said earlier, you know, we had the moment where Leader tried to dive top and just literally ran it down for no apparent reason. He later redeemed himself, but that is still something that they need to figure out. I think a player that needs more praise on this roster is Labrov, whom I actually have an interview coming out with in article form, so be sure to follow my Twitter if you want to follow that development, and when that article comes out, you will see it on my timeline. But Labrov has been playing very well this weekend, especially. Has been a big enabler for Vitality, setting up the moments for Leader and Selfmade and Crownshot to pop off. SLT in the top lane, as I mentioned earlier, is played their second game very well as well. So yeah, I think there's big upsides. There's steady improvement from Vitality. They just need to polish it a bit more, and then they'll absolutely make it to the playoffs with relatively ease. I already think they're making a great case for themselves. Mad Lions then also had a 4-3 score. I do think that Mad Lions, you know, they've been practicing from within quarantine since the first week, because I had that COVID case within their League of Legends stuff, or like at least a League of Legends team. They didn't reveal who eventually, who ultimately was the one that got the virus. But I also have an interview with Carty coming out, which will be on this channel, not an article forum. So you just have to subscribe in order to stay up to date on that. But he said that playing from within quarantine did a big number on them, has definitely halted and been a big factor in them not performing as well. It's been a big mental factor as well for them. So that it's good that they're finally out of quarantine now. As they shared on Twitter, they are free. They can do whatever they want again. Well, I guess not whatever they want, but they can leave their room. They can go outside. They can hang out together and play from within the same room together, which is obviously going to benefit them greatly. I'm still not worried about them. I've said it before the split started, and I'll say it again. As long as Mad Lions makes playoffs, I think they absolutely make Worlds. G2 also in 4th place, 4-3. Also not very worried about them in the long run, but at the moment, obviously, G2 is not performing well. They have a lot of new input coming in from Nelson, who's trying to micromanage a lot of the things that their players are doing, and it's causing a bit of a strain on their development because they're trying to actively think about all the new things that they need to implement into their basic gameplay. Another interview plug, because I have an interview with Mickey coming out during the week as well on this YouTube channel, so absolutely hit that subscribe button if you want to stay up to date and see that interview as one of the first people. It's a lot for them to take in, is my takeaway. I'm not going to spoil too much, and it's going to take more time for them to fully implement that. But I do think that I really wonder, is all that information being put in actually good for them? Because if you do this in the spring split, obviously you have the spring split, that doesn't matter too much for the teams, you know. Okay, MSI is a cool tournament to go to, but you have the time, then you have that buffer to say, okay, we have the time to implement this, and then when Summer Split hits, we know everything, we can go all out. And now in the Summer Split, they're working with a much shorter window of time, which maybe also increases the stress and the pressure on the players. So I'm not too sure if that's actually going to pay out in their favor for the Summer Split. Hopefully for them it does, obviously, and I do think that for Europe as a whole, seeing it starts that a team as G2 succeed is also a good thing. So for the LEC as a whole, I think it's a good thing that at least at some point they live up to the potential they have. Whether or not it's winning the split, or, you know, maybe not, but I do think that this team faces more stress because of what they have done than the other team, than some of the other top teams, and it remains to be seen if that's gonna be a good thing for them in the long run, which is not that long anymore. If you look at the Summer Split, we're in week 3. There's only 5 weeks left, and then you need to be top 6, which I expect them to be. But then in playoffs, are you going to be able to, you know, live up to the potential you had? Rogue is in shared 2nd place with Fnatic. They're still not performing at a level where I'm happy. The bot lane of Rogue is very good. Larson is not having a great split. Inspired is is just good as usual, and Odo Amne is, sure, he's good, you know. He's consistent, but it's mainly the mid lane, Larson, who has not been performing very well, and that is something that I hope for him he will be able to figure out. Also have an interview with him coming out. Man, it's just interview city, isn't it? It is, actually. I have many interviews coming out in the next week. Did 5 of them, so there's a lot of content to be consumed. So yeah, you'll be able to hear more from Larson about what's affecting his play, but the bottom line is that also he is obviously not very happy with how he is performing. So for Rogue, I'm not worried. They're still consistent. It's just, you know, finding their rhythm in the patch, especially around the mid lane, and then they'll be fine. Fnatic then, also in 2nd place. Good team. I did not expect them to be as strong as they are at the moment, honestly. As I've said before, I think that putting Whip on jungle was a huge risk, but it's paid off incredibly well. Even though he himself says, you know, I'm much more of a facilitator now than the playmaker he could be in the top lane. but he's doing that very well. Niski and Upset and Hillesang and Adam are all able to carry games and have many important decisions. Hillesang is still always going to be the flip king, but Upset is just consistent what Adam had. Even though the start of the split was maybe a bit too slow against G2, he just showed what a maniac he is, especially on the Renekton. So that was a great performance from him. Very happy for him that he is able to pop off in such an important game. And yeah, Fnatic as a whole is just a solid contender, it seems to be at the moment. And lastly, there is Misfits in the sole #1 position. Everybody is speculating, when is this Misfits going to crumble? I'm not sure if they actually are, because Herod in the top lane is looking so insane. Resorg is fantastic. Veteo is great. The bot lane is solid with Vander and Kobe. So I honestly am not sure if this Misfits is going to drop off. Maybe when the best of 5s come around, where you need to play more matches and the dynamic shifts, that may be where they face a challenge. But at the moment, it's really tough to see where this Misfits might fall. The LEC is obviously going to change to new patches, which will affect the meta. But, you know, I'm not sure if that is something that can phase Misfits at this point. So very excited for their play at the moment. And finally, we go to the LEC SuperFantasy standings of my lobby EU Stay On My Mind. In first place is Faramir with 1880 points. Then there's Loco X with 1821 points. Queen Dobrev at 1703 points in third place. The one Sidel, I still don't know how to pronounce the name, is 7. If you read this, please put in the comments how to pronounce your name so I can do it correctly from now on. Fourth place with 1701 points. Then Wittercast with 1681. Stepan with 1671 points. Lucky Reed at 1615. And Laneri at 1597. I'm in 9th place with 1588 points. And 10th is Bene with 1572 points. That's it for the LEC recap for this week. Let me know in the comments below which moments you thought were worth interesting. If you like my content, like and subscribe. And stay tuned for more content.